Today we're diving into a fascinating topic that has probably crossed your mind at least once. Why do men and women not agree on what's attractive? We've all noticed this difference. Maybe you've already said to a friend, "I find this person super attractive," and they've responded with a perplexed look. Seriously? Really? Why do we have such different perceptions of what's attractive? Is it a matter of personal taste, or is there something more profound hiding behind? In this video, we're going to examine what influences the beauty standards of men and women, how our biology and culture shape these perceptions, and most importantly, why there's so much divergence between the two sexes. Stay with me, as by the end you'll have a better understanding of these differences, and who knows, it might even help you in your relationships. Part 1. The biological instinct. When we try to understand why men and women have such different criteria for attractiveness, it's essential to look at our biology and evolution. For millennia, our brains have been programmed to seek certain traits more than others, often for a very specific purpose: survival and reproduction. These instincts, which date back to the early ages of humanity, have shaped the way we perceive attractiveness. For men, for example, studies have shown that they're instinctively attracted to signs of youth, fertility, and health. These criteria have a biological basis. Youth is an indicator of maximum fertility. Smooth skin, a symmetrical face, a slender figure, and wider hips are often perceived as signs of good health and the ability to bear children. These physical appearance elements signal a higher probability of successful reproduction, which from a purely biological standpoint is crucial. Facial symmetry is particularly interesting, as it's often associated with strong genes and better overall health, making it an unconscious major factor in attractiveness for men. Women, on the other hand, look for different signs. They're often attracted to characteristics in men that signal strength, protection, and resources. A well-defined chin, broad shoulders, and an imposing stature are traits associated with superior physical abilities, and thus the ability to protect and provide for a family. These signs are unconsciously perceived as indicators of a partner capable of ensuring long-term well-being. It's a way to evaluate the ability to ensure long-term survival. In addition to these physical signs, women often tend to be attracted to subtle but significant elements, such as posture or a man's attitude. For example, a confident stride, dominant behavior in certain social situations, or a confident gaze can reinforce perceived attractiveness. These characteristics reveal not only signs of physical strength, but also indicators of high social status and the ability to navigate a competitive environment, crucial qualities for survival in ancient societies. Thus, the first major difference between men and women emerges. Men often focus on visual aspects, primarily physical, which symbolize health and fertility. Women, on the other hand, tend to seek broader signs of security and social status in a man. In fact, men value what is immediately visible and can guarantee healthy offspring, while women look for indicators of protection, status, and social capabilities. This biological dynamic is deeply rooted in our evolution. However, it's important to note that these tendencies don't entirely determine our attractiveness choices. Although these biological criteria have forged part of our perceptions, we're not just biological machines, and numerous other factors influence attraction, which is exactly what we'll try to detail in the points to come. Part 2. The impact of society and media. Biology only explains part of this difference. If we stop there, we're missing a crucial element: society. The media, advertising, social networks, all these shape our perceptions of beauty and can blur the lines. Men and women are exposed to different stereotypes from a young age. For example, in films and advertising, women are often represented as being attractive when they conform to standards of slimness and youth. On the other hand, men are often valued for their success, wealth, or power. This social pressure greatly influences our vision of what's attractive. Men may then believe that what they should look for is primarily visible and external beauty. Women, on the other hand, may feel more attracted to men who embody success or security, even if it has nothing to do with physical appearance. This brings us to another difference. Beauty criteria are largely influenced by culture. What we find attractive in Europe may be totally different from beauty standards in Asia or Africa. In some countries, rounder figures are considered a sign of beauty and wealth, while in others, slimness is valued. The media reinforce these standards and create an image of what men and women should look like to be considered attractive. This explains why men and women often have such divergent perceptions of what's beautiful. They don't consume the same cultural and social messages, and therefore they don't seek the same things. Part 3. Psychological and emotional differences. Before diving into the psychological differences between men and women, it's important to understand that these distinctions reflect unique ways of approaching attraction. Men and women can look at the same person, but not be attracted to the same things. Here are two distinct approaches that explain this. Men and their visual approach to attractiveness. Studies show that men are often more visual when it comes to attraction. This means they focus more quickly on physical aspects such as external appearance, clothing, or body language. A seductive silhouette, a certain walk, or an attractive smile can immediately capture men's attention and provoke instant attraction. This tendency to value visual aspects is rooted in biology, but also in how the male brain processes attractiveness. Men are biologically wired to respond more quickly to visual stimuli. This doesn't mean they're superficial, but rather that their brain detects and responds instinctively to visual signals. A harmonious face, a well-groomed style, or a confident posture are top priorities for them. In summary, men tend to rely on what they see first, and this strongly shapes their perception of what's attractive. This explains why, in many conversations, men often talk more about appearance when discussing attractiveness. Women and their broader view of attractiveness. On the other hand, women often place more importance on non-visual traits in the attraction process. For them, attractiveness is a much more complete set that includes elements like voice, humor, confidence, or how a man behaves socially. Women are more sensitive to the evolution of attractiveness over time. They may not be immediately seduced by a man's appearance, but they can progressively be attracted to him through his internal qualities, such as charisma, kindness, and emotional intelligence. This makes attractiveness a dynamic and complex process for women. What's particularly important for them is consistency. A man who shows reliability, empathy, and knows how to behave with respect, even in difficult situations, becomes increasingly attractive. For women, attractiveness resides as much in what they feel as in what they see, which explains why they value aspects like personality and social intelligence. This divergence in how men and women evaluate attraction is one of the reasons why their criteria seem so different. But these differences are complementary and enrich human relationships. Part 4. The importance of personality and values. Physical attraction is often what grabs attention first, but what lies behind this attraction can be even more fascinating. Personality plays a massive role in attractiveness, and it's here that men and women often diverge in their criteria for what's truly attractive. What pleases one may not have the same effect on the other, and this creates interesting dynamics. Subpart 1. Women's expectations of personality. For many women, a man can be physically attractive, but if his personality doesn't follow, he instantly loses points. In general, they place much more importance on internal qualities like kindness, empathy, and the ability to listen. These qualities are perceived as signs of emotional stability and maturity, essential traits in the long term of a relationship. Women may also seek a man who demonstrates emotional intelligence, a man capable of understanding and reacting appropriately to others' needs. A person who shows they care about their loved ones, whether it's family or a partner, is perceived as more attractive, regardless of physical appearance. In fact, in many cases, a strong emotional connection becomes much more important than external appearance. Subpart 2. The psychology of men and attraction. On the men's side, physical attraction tends to play a more dominant role at the beginning. They're often less inclined to seek an immediate strong emotional connection. This doesn't mean personality has no importance for them. On the contrary, men also appreciate qualities like a good sense of humor, a positive attitude, and especially confidence. However, unlike women, men will generally observe these aspects a bit later in the relationship. At first, the initial physical impression may be what attracts them the most, but with time, men like women are capable of focusing on deeper elements if the relationship becomes more serious. Subpart 3. The paradoxical attraction to bad boys. However, an interesting dynamic sometimes occurs, particularly among certain women, who may be paradoxically attracted to men with a more complex or less wise personality. This phenomenon concerns what's often called the attraction to the bad boy, a man who seems less predictable, more rebellious, or who exudes an aura of mystery. This can be difficult to understand at first, But this attraction can be explained by a need for strong emotions, adventure, and sometimes even a certain power of seduction. Women who are attracted to these men may feel drawn to their assertive character, independence, and ability to seduce despite a lack of alignment with more conventional ideals of kindness or emotional stability. In some cases, these men may not be particularly handsome according to traditional criteria, but their charisma, their carefree attitude, or their aura of inaccessibility become irresistible qualities. These men know how to play their nonchalance or their mysterious side, and this can largely compensate for a lack of conventional physical attractiveness. That's why you can observe situations where a woman becomes fascinated by someone who isn't really beautiful or perfect, but whose personality, attitude, or way of being triggers something deeper in her. Conclusion. In summary, what attracts a man or a woman goes far beyond physical appearance. Personality and values count enormously, but in different ways according to gender. Men and women often focus on different aspects in attractiveness, but it's these very differences that create fascinating dynamics in relationships that are more than just superficial. Kindness, empathy, and listening are crucial for women, but there are also women who prefer men who are more mysterious, less predictable. As for men, although they're attracted to appearance, a sense of humor and confidence also take an important place in their criteria. At the end of the day, attraction is a subtle mix of physical and personal factors, which vary from person to person, and what works for one may not work for another. So the next time you and a friend don't agree on what's attractive, remember that there's no right or wrong answer. Beauty is truly subjective, and it's this diversity that makes human relationships so interesting. Thanks for watching this video. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe and like. See you in the next fascinating video.